Good day, everyone. I am Marge Kabulang and I am assigned to discuss to you a topic in advanced strategic management. But before we formally start with our topic today, let's have first a recap regarding our topic last meeting. Well, last meeting, we were able to define strategic management, which states that a strategic management consists of the analysis, decisions, and actions an organization undertakes in order to create and sustain competitive advantage. In relation to this, we were also able to discuss some important innovations introduced in the market presently or recently and during this pandemic. Not to forget, we were also able to relate and have an overview as to how strategic management were applied in the book of Sun Tzu entitled The Art of War. Our professor was also able to introduce to us noise analysis and how can we use it in strategic management. So now that we have refreshed our minds as to our discussion last meeting, we then proceed to our main topic. So our main topic is that analyzing the external environment of the firm, creating competitive advantages. In the quest of companies' competitive advantage, it must consider both the internal and external environment surrounding the firm. Businesses do not operate in a vacuum. Rather, they operate in a dynamic environment that has a direct influence on how they operate and whether they will achieve their objectives. In this report, we will focus on the importance of the analysis of the external factors. So, when we talk about external factors, we are referring to the factors or conditions that are outside of the organization, such as but not limited to economy, laws, consumers, politics, sociocultural, competition, and a lot more. External environment is basically defined as the factors outside the business that can affect its operations by influencing its activities and choices and determine its opportunities and risks. So, what is the importance? Why do we consider these external factors? Well, basically, analyzing the external environment is a critical step in recognizing and understanding the opportunities and threats that an organization faced. Take note that successful companies must recognize opportunities and threats in their firms in external environment. So this will be the basis or one of the bases for them to determine what are those opportunities that they can explore. Note that they must be aware of what's going on outside their company. It should not be limited on internal factors because if they focus exclusively on the efficiency of internal operations, the firm may create, yes, the best quality products, but not suitable to the current market needs, such as they may be creating the best wired telephone, typewriter, and outdated technological machines. These are good products, but they are not responsive or they are not already suitable to the current market demand. Note that business owners and managers have a great deal of control over the internal environment of business. This covers day to day decisions. They choose the supplies they purchase, which employees they hire, the products they sell, and where they sell those products. They use their skills and resources to create goods and services that will satisfy existing and prospective customers. However, the external environment conditions that affect a business are generally beyond the control of the management because basically it changes constantly. And to compete successfully, business owners must continuously study the environment and adapt their businesses accordingly. That is why we are proceeding or continuing with forecasting. So, forecasting involves the development of plausible projections about the direction, scope, speed, and intensity of environmental change. So basically, what is the purpose of forecasting? This is basically to predict change. A firm's strategy may be good at one point in time, but when management's reference or basis gets out of touch with the realities of the actual business situation, this might result to unfavorable deliverables. That is why forecasting the possibilities and coming up with assumptions is considered beneficial in having competitive advantage. Just a note, perceptual acuity is the ability to sense what is coming before the fog clears. This only means that managers and business owners must have this ability to predict or to know what are the possibilities that can happen days, years, or after a few decades in order to know and project their responsive activities and product to the market. And when they have this perceptual acuity, it would help them to forecast or produce this knowledge they are required to have in order to deliver or predict or adapt to changes. But in order to develop forecasts, it is necessary that we consider the three important process or inputs in forecasting. So first is environmental scanning. When we talk about environmental scanning, it is it will involve surveillance of a firm's external environment to predict environmental changes and detect changes already underway. This will alert the organization as to the critical trends and events before changes develop a discernible pattern and before competitors recognize them. So, experts agree that spotting key trends requires a combination of knowing your business and your customer as well as keeping an eye on what's happening around you because this enables you to better identify the emerging trends that will affect your business. After environmental scanning, we now proceed to environmental monitoring. After we determine what are these changes or trends that will affect our business, we need now to track the evaluation of environmental trends, the sequences of events, and the streams of activities. They may be trends that the firm came across by accident or ones that were brought to its attention from the outside organization. Monitoring enables firms to evaluate how dramatically environmental trends are changing the competitive landscape. After the environmental monitoring process, it is also important to know the competitive intelligence. When we talk about competitive intelligence, these are firms' activities of collecting and interpreting data on competitors, defining and understanding the industry, and identifying competitors' strengths and weaknesses. So, competitive intelligence helps firms define and understand their industry and identify competitors' strengths and weaknesses. This includes the intelligence gathering associated with collecting data on competitors and interpreting the same. If this competitive intelligence is done properly, it will help a company avoid surprises by anticipating competitors' moves and decreasing response time. So, once environmental scanning, monitoring, intelligence gathering are completed, we can now come up with our forecast as to these rapid changes in the market. But note that after this forecast, it should not stop there. The firm must do a more in-depth analysis to see how all this affects its strategy. So, in this discussion, we will present to you different kinds of analysis that firms can use in order to assess or to come up with an analysis on how this environmental scanning, monitoring, and competitive intelligence will affect their business. First, as we have the scenario analysis. Scenario analysis is a more in depth approach to forecasting. It draws on a range of disciplines and interests, among them are economics, psychology, sociology, and demographics. It usually begins with a discussion of participants' thoughts on ways in which societal trends and economics and technology may affect an issue. Scenario analysis involves the projection of future possible events. It does not rely on extrapolation of historical trends. Rather, it seeks to explore possible developments that may only be connected to the past. So this is the scenario analysis. So what is the current status? What are the circumstances? What is our status at this moment? We need to re-examine and gather information from that scenario in order to come up with the possibilities and opportunities that we can introduce. Second one is, we are familiar with this, the SWOT analysis. This is a framework for analyzing a company's internal and external environments, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Well, to understand the business environment of a particular firm, you need also to analyze both the general and the firm's industry and competitive environment. Generally, firms compete with other firms in the same industry. And one of the most basic techniques for analyzing firm and industry condition is SWOT analysis. It provides you a raw material, a basic listing of conditions both inside and that of outside your company. That is SWOT analysis. And a new introduction or a new analysis that we have is the noise analysis. Well, noise analysis, the focus of this analysis is to determine if the business needs and to determine the business needs and understand the impediments involved. This stands for the needs, opportunities, improvements, strengths, and expectations. We know for a fact that noise analysis is a new introduction or a new kind of analysis introduced to be more responsive to the current situation in the market. So, let's go now deeper to the external environment. What are these external environments that we are talking about? Well, this external business environment is composed of numerous outside organizations and forces that we can group into seven key sub environments. So we have three actually. We have the general environment, two actually, general environment and the competitive environment. So let's start with general environment. So I want you to focus on the figure. So we have the internal environment, but now we will focus on the external environment. We have the technological, economic, political or legal, demographic, social, competitive, and global. So let's start with technological. So when we talk about technological environment, we are talking about the application of technology that can stimulate growth in any economic system. Technology is the application of science and engineering skills and knowledge to solve production and organizational problems. It can be through introduction of new equipment and software, or that of a system that can improve productivity and reduce cost of the company. In technological factors, we are basically looking at the new introduction of technological materials or products, or that of equipment of software that would improve not only the profit of the company but on how they will conduct or perform their day-to-day activities. That is the first environmental factor that we need to consider: technology. What are the changes? What are the new technology that we need to have or we need to learn or accept in our day-to-day activity? Next is the economic factor. This category is one of the most important external influences in businesses. It involves fluctuations in the level of economics activity that create business cycles that affect businesses and individuals in many ways. When the economy is growing, for example, unemployment rates are low and income levels rise. In economic factor, we factor in also inflation, the interest rates, and other aspect that could affect our economic activity. In economic factor, we also have the forces of supply and demand. This will determine how prices and quantities of goods and services behave in a market. So after technological, we have economic. Next one, we will have the political or legal factors. The political climate of a country is another critical factor for managers to consider, because in their day-to-day business operation, the amount of government activity, the types of laws it passes, and the general political stability of a government are just some components of political climate. For example, in the Philippines, laws passed by Congress and the many regulatory agencies cover such areas as competition, minimum wages, environmental protection, work safety, copyrights, and patents. The state and the local government units also exert control over businesses. They may impose taxes, they may issue corporate license or business licenses, setting specific zoning ordinances, and other similar regulations. So, looking at the political and legal influences or factor in business, it is necessary that a firm knows the existing laws and regulations to which it needs to abide or completely know how will it work into its advantage. Next one is we have the demographic. The demographic factor. So when we talk about demographic factor, these are an uncontrollable factor in the business environment and extremely important to businesses. Demography is the study of people's vital statistics such as their age, gender, race, ethnicity, and location. Demographics help companies define the markets for their products and also determine the size and composition of the workforce. Demographics are at the heart of many business decisions. Businesses today must deal with the unique shopping preferences of different generations, which each require marketing approaches and goods and services that will target their needs. Considering that we have the millennials, the generation X, these generations have a different way or market behavior, which the firm or businesses must understand in order to deliver the correct or suitable products and services to that targeted market. So that is why we need to consider demographic factors as one of our external environment. We have also social factors. When we talk about social factors, it's basically our attitude, values, our lifestyle, and influence on how, what, where, and when people purchase certain products and services. Well, basically, they are difficult to predict because they can be very subjective. They also change as people move through different life stages. For example, before the pandemic, people are hesitant to buy or do online shopping, do online payment. But because of the pandemic, because of this change in our life, we need to adjust. The market now is leaning forward doing online shopping, online marketing. Everything is going online now. That is why these social factors will also affect how clients will react or what are the demands that we need to comply or we need to respond to. In addition, we need also to consider the issues or that are social inequalities that we are facing because this will give us also a glimpse on how can we divide or segment our markets. Okay, and next we have the global factors. Well, when we talk about global factors, we are talking about international market or international scope of doing business. We can consider that or we can say that more firms are expanding their operations and market reach beyond the borders of the Philippines. Globalization provides both opportunities to assess larger potential markets and a broad base of production factors such as raw materials, labor, and technical professionals. When we talk about global factors, we are also considering the currency exchange rates now, uh, increasing global trade, and the economic emergence of certain country and trade agreements among countries. So these are the general environment. But we also have what we call the competitive environment. This competitive environment consists of factors in the task or industry environment that are particularly relevant to a firm's strategy. So when we talk about competitive environment, we are also talking about competitors, customers, and even suppliers. So, in order to examine or understand the competitive environment, we have here the Porter's Five Forces model of industry competition. So, what is this Porter's Five Forces model? So, this Five Forces model developed by Michael E. Porter has been the most commonly used analytical tool for examining the competitive environment. It describes the competitive environment in terms of five basic competitive forces. So, what are these five basic competitive forces? We have the first is the threat of new entrants. So, when we talk about this will refer to the possibility that the profits of established firms in the industry may be eroded by new competitors. The extent of the threat depends on existing barriers to entry and the combined reactions from existing competitors. So we have here access to distribution channels, economies of scale, product differentiation, capital requirements. So, when we talk about threat of new entrants is, ito yung mga bago sa market, new competitors. Ito yung mga trying to penetrate the market and keep up with the competition. That is the first force that this model is introducing us. We also have the bargaining power of buyers. Well, when we talk about buyers' power of bargaining power, it threatens buyers threaten an industry by forcing down prices, bargaining for higher quality or more services, and playing competitors against each other. So, when we talk about the bargaining power of buyers, because there are demands in the market, the consumers or the buyers will basically demand from the companies a more responsive, a higher quality product or a better service from that specific business establishment or entity. If there will be a bargaining, if the buyers will insist on bargaining the prices or the services or the quality of a product a business is providing, it can cause or affect the profitability of a business because you need to respond to this demand of the consumers. So that's the second force that we need to consider. Next is the bargaining power of suppliers. So when we talk about this one, it is not only the buyers who can demand these changes or different demands from from the business entities. Suppliers can also exert bargaining power by threatening to raise prices or to reduce the quality of purchased goods and services that a business entity needs. So when this happens, this will cause a disruption or a total change on how the business entities will work with the suppliers in order to maintain or sustain the quality of their goods and services. Second one is, the fourth one is the threat of substitute products and services. One of the threats in business is the market substitutability. Business enterprises or entities have a threat on what we call what are ev- what are the market substitutes for for the products and services they are offering. So basically, all firms within an industry compete with industries producing substitute products and services. It is not only limited to the same product or services being offered. That is not the only competitor or threat, but you also need to look at the substitute products and services offered by another company. Because you see, substitutes limit the potential returns of an industry by placing a ceiling on the prices that firms in that industry can profitably charge. So dahil meron tayong markets, may substitute tayo sa goods na ito, mas mura pa siya, then consumers tends to just go to the market substitute rather than going to the actual product or service that they would want to purchase, because this market substitute offers basically similar or a more affordable product or service that they need. And the last one, we have the intensity of rivalry among competitors in an industry. Firms use tactics like price competition, advertising battles, product introductions, and increased customer service or warranties. Well, rivalry occurs when competitors sense the pressure or act on an opportunity to improve their position. This affects the competitive environment and influences the ability of existing firms to achieve profitability. Kasi kapag alam mong meron kang kalaban or kakompetensya at yung competition na yun is so tight, so close, it tends to give you the impression na this would be a different or a difficult competition that I need to you need to maintain or constantly improve the goods and services you now offer in order not to lose or in order to maintain your advantage over your rivals. Yun eh. That's why we need to consider this five this five forces introduced by this model. So after we discuss the external environments of in business or in firms, let's take a look at we have the summary. Let's sum it up so that we can understand or we can grasp the topic for today. So it is important that firms or companies must analyze the external environment surrounding their firm to minimize or eliminate threats and exploit opportunities. And this will involve a continuous process of environmental scanning and monitoring, as well as obtaining competitive intelligence on the potential and present rivals. When we know the external environment, this this will give us a valuable inputs for developing forecast. So we have here the three process that will produce a forecast, and from this forecast, the institution may conduct in-depth analysis by using scenario analysis, SWOT analysis, and noise analysis. We also identified two types of environments. We have the general environment and the competitive environment. The six segments of the general environment are demographic, sociocultural, political or legal, technological, economic, and global. This will allow us to basically see or know the dramatic effect on a firm of these external environments. On the other hand, the competitive environment will allow us to evaluate the competition or the competitors, the supplier, and the buyer, which leads us to the Porter's five forces model of industry analysis, wherein it includes the five threats that we have or the business enterprises must consider. First is the threat of new entrants, bargaining power of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, and the threat of the substitutes and the rivalry among competitors. So, with that, we now proceed to the last part of this report, which is the case analysis. The case of Robin Hood would give us the uh let me just first give you an overview as to the case of Robin Hood. Uh Here, the revolt against the sheriff had begun as a personal crusade, erupting out of Robin's conflict with the sheriff and his administration. But alone, however, Robin Hood could do little. He therefore sought men or allies who are men with grievances and a deep sense of justice. He then later on welcomed all who came when he welcomed all those men who are willing to join his vision. He was successful in building a large body of men who are disciplined to fight against the sheriff. So the goal is to defeat the sheriff in this case. So because this initiative by Robin Hood was successful, the band or his team grew. A lot of men would want to join his team because it seems that they are very successful in achieving their objective or goal. But because they are already numerous, certain problems occurred. Like for example, uh, there's already scarcity when it comes to food, to their food supply, their revenues from stealing from different individuals or merchants were running short already, and they can Robin Hood can no longer discipline all his members or allies. So basically, the mission of Robin Hood was to rob from the rich and give it to the poor. That's the mission. And their objective is to overthrow the rule of the sheriff and bring King Richard back to power. So Robin Hood was the head, and in its organizational structure, he has decentralized the tasks such as delegated tasks such as intelligence and scouting, discipline, finances, and that of food supplies. So everything was going well in the case of Robin Hood. In their they are doing they were aiming their objective or goal defeat or to defeat the sheriff. However, because of this uh, increase in number, certain problems occurred. So what are these problems? So we will have to discuss this through noise analysis. So basically, Robin Hood's main problem now was the increasing size of his band. Initially, he hoped that strength lay in numbers, and that the more men he had, the better it would be for him to effectively fight against the sheriff's administration. He failed to put enough thought in curbing the number of people being recruited. So the dilemma occurred when the increasing number of men had made the band into a bigger institution. The, the more men were recruited into the organization, then there is a less face-to-face interaction with Robin and with each of his men, and then this would make it hard for him to enforce rules and regulations using his old ways because vigilance was not present with the new recruits. So parang wala na siyang control because sobrang dami na nila. Wala na siyang, hindi niya na mahawakan or ma-implement yung gusto niya sa lahat. And one of his dilemma is the capacity to fund the increasing number of people because nagkakaroon na ng scarcity sa supply, sa food nila, sa provisions nila. So, that is the main problem of Robin Hood. So, what are the strengths of Robin Hood in this case? Basically, one of his strengths is the number of his band. The increasing number of his band will allow him to have a stronger group to fight the sheriff's administration. So mas marami sila, mas malakas ang pwersa nila. Second is, at first, there was a delegation of tasks, specific duties to certain men or to certain members of the band. So this delegation or organizational structure is a strength for them because they know who is in charge for the food, for the finances, or for the discipline of the members of the band. But aside from that, so these are the strengths of the organization. Second, what are their needs? So basically, they need certain resources, materials, food supplies, men. They also need provisions in order to fulfill or achieve their goal. So, however, there are also opportunities for the organization of Robin Hood. The opportunity is that they have the capacity to plot their tactic or strategy on how to restore the power of King Richard so as to defeat the sheriff's administration. In this case of Robin Hood, there are a lot of opportunities. It can also include, aside from what I have mentioned earlier, it can also include the expansion of operational area, also by fixing a transit tax. Aside from this source of income, which is robbing from different merchants or rich people, they can also fix a transit tax. That's an opportunity for them. An opportunity also is to basically just kill the sheriff so as to achieve their ultimate goal therein. But we need also to consider what are the improvements necessary. So in this case, it is with the given resources, with the given number of members, Robinhood can create or ensued a new plan, new organizational structure, so as to delegate all the necessary functions or decisions that needs to be that the organization needs to respond. Another improvement that we can consider is, because there are more member or men in the group, there are more minds who can give suggestions or idea on what strategy they can devise in order to respond to the present problem of the organization. So, applying this noise analysis in the case of Robinhood, we can see that although there is a problem as to the number of members of the organization that causes the scarcity in food, that causes the productivity and discipline of its members, these are but challenges that we can or that they can still work out through the strengths they have, through the opportunities presented, and through the evolving change in their current situation. So it is important that these opportunities and strengths must be used or utilized in order to come up with a more responsive and a more reasonable strategy in order to efficiently and effectively meet their objectives and goals as an organization. With that, I am ending my report. We are now done with the case analysis of Robinhood, and we are also able to discuss the external environment and the importance of analyzing the same in order to create a competitive advantage for different organizations. So with that, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you learned something from this report, and I hope that this would be an avenue for us to learn more and to try to develop the skill of learning, continuously learning the process and the importance of this creating competitive advantage through strategic management. Once again, thank you very much. I am Marjeline Kabulang, and this is the end of my presentation. Have a great day.